guys? My name is Chelsea. I am going to be reviewing the most recent trip that I took with EFUltimateBreak, the Iceland winter escape trip. This was my 4th trip that I've taken with EF, so let's get into it. So today I'm going to take you day by day through the itinerary of what we did on this trip and give you an honest review and my honest thoughts of what I thought of this trip. They take care of pretty much everything for you. Your flights, your accommodations, your transportation from the airport to the different locations. They provide you with a tour director. Your breakfasts are included. A few lunches and dinners might be included depending on what trip type you take. Which leads me into my next point. EF has 2 different trip types. So they have Essential and Plus. I did the Iceland winter escape trip as the Plus version. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Last thing, full transparency, I am an EFUltimateBreak ambassador, which means that if you want to take this trip or any of the other amazing trips that they have available, you can use the link in the description box below with this code, and it'll take $100 off of your very first trip with EFUltimateBreak. And the best part is, if there's any sales going on, you can combine my unique $100 off code with any current sales, which is pretty cool. Not a lot of companies do that, so take advantage of it if you're interested. So let's cover the basics of this trip. This trip is 6 days long. It covers, you stay in one city throughout the trip, which is Reykjavik, the capital, and the activity level is listed as moderate, which means wear your fitness tracker and watch those steps pile up. This isn't anything that you need to train for, but it's definitely an adventure. I would have to agree with that activity level for this trip. There is a little bit of light hiking. I wouldn't call it really hiking, but it's definitely not your average just walk around a city trip, so keep that in mind. Let's talk accommodations. So for this trip, we stayed in the Hotel Klutur. I think I said that right. Spoiler alert, I am going to probably butcher all the Icelandic names because, no surprise, I don't speak Icelandic. As far as the accommodations go, we stayed at the Hotel Klutur, and it was pretty nice. It was pretty clean. I had no issues with the cleanliness of the place we stayed at. Comfort was actually pretty good. If you've stayed in Europe, you know that a lot of beds are very firm and they're not like that plush, soft beds that we're so accustomed to here in America. So I was really surprised. Now, it was not the American plush level. Don't get me wrong. It was not like that, but it was a lot softer than most of the beds I've experienced in Europe thus far. I went in winter, so I did not pay any attention if there was air conditioning in the room we stayed in. I will say this, because it was winter and Iceland can have very harsh weather. We did have underfloor heating, which was very interesting to say the least. It was something that a lot of our group was actually really concerned about. Like, we were afraid we were going to freeze. We actually thought we were gonna have to sleep on the floor to stay warm. And I just want to stop and say that is not an issue, like, at all. First of all, your feet never had to touch a cold floor when you first got up in the morning. Amazing. And the room was always the perfect temperature. I never felt cold. Like every other EFUltimateBreak trip I've took, we did have included breakfast at the hotel, which was very Americanized. As far as the distance from the hotel to the city center, I would say it was about a 15-minute walk, which was not bad at all. It wasn't too far from the city. It wasn't in the middle of the city center. There's definitely places that you could stay at closer. That would be more in the most central part of Reykjavik, but it was still a good walking distance and it wasn't too much. Without further ado, let's get into the itinerary and break it down day by day. I do want to preface by saying that I did fly in early for this trip. This trip I took over Thanksgiving last November in 2024. And I flew in Friday night, arrived Saturday morning, and this trip did not officially start until the following Monday. For day 1, this is officially the day that you're basically getting on an overnight flight where you're starting the process of getting from your home destination to the final destination for the trip. So for most people, this was red-eye flights. For me, I was already in Iceland, staying in another hotel. So day 2 is your arrival day. This is when the trip is actually really going to start for you. I packed up my things at my previous hotel, and then I took a taxi over to the Hotel Klutur, and I met up with my group, and we did our welcome, introduction, orientation, walking tour with our tour director. This probably didn't take more than an hour. Reykjavik is a very small city compared to a lot of other European capitals, so it did not take long to kind of get the lay of the land and kind of get acclimated to how things are set up and how to get around the city. And it was cold. I will say it was a little slippery. The first 15 minutes or so was pretty slick. It had rained the night before in Reykjavik, and of course it froze, but luckily it did warm up enough to where we didn't have to deal with it being too slick the entire time, thank God. So after the walking tour, our tour director had an optional excursion plan that we could have took advantage of if we wanted to, which was whale watching. I opted not to do this just because I felt like this is something that I could do pretty much anywhere else. While I was in Iceland, there was other things that I just really wanted to see and do, and a little bit of spoiler for my next video about my previous 3 days in Iceland. I had not spent a lot of time in Reykjavik. I did a lot of day trips out of the cities so far, so I had not actually really truly explored very much of the city. So I opted to spend that time just exploring Reykjavik, walked around. We went to this pretty little lake, which I will insert some pictures and videos. There was a ton of birds. If you are not a fan of birds, I would not recommend going here. There's a lot of them, and they even have like a plaque of all of the different birds that are in this area. But it was really pretty to see the houses lined up and the church. It was just so picturesque. So I really enjoyed that. After that, I had made some new friends on the trip, and we went to the Nom chocolate factory, which is so good. But yeah, we also just kind of walked around to the harbor area, and we also went to the Harpa house, which again, I will insert some pictures of. Just kind of explored, started doing a little souvenir shopping. At this point, we were waiting for our hotel rooms to be ready. Most rooms are not ready until 3, so we just kind of hung out, walked around, and eventually our rooms are ready. So we went back to the hotel to get checked in, to get our luggage from the luggage storage room where we had stowed it, and to just kind of get acclimated, unpacked. And for those that flew in, definitely let them freshen up and rest because it's a lot. So we did that, and then after we rested for a little bit, we did go back out and we did explore a little bit. We went to Broad & Company, which is an amazing bakery. If you ever are in Reykjavik, you absolutely need to try their cinnamon roll. It will change your life. After that, we headed back to our rooms to freshen up and get ready for the welcome dinner. We had a welcome dinner, which is included with all EF Ultimate Break trips, and it's included with the cost. And so we had our welcome dinner here, and it was really good. I enjoyed the soup. As you will find out in Iceland, soup is a big thing, which makes sense because it's cold. I opted to get the choice of lamb, and I gotta be honest, was not a huge fan of it, mostly because my piece was extremely fatty, so I didn't get to eat a lot of it because ew. But I will say that other people on the trip did not have pieces like that were super fatty like that, and they loved it. And I will say, if I hadn't gotten such a fatty piece of lamb, I think I really would have liked it, because the pieces that I did get to enjoy that was not fatty was really good. The dessert was really good. Anything with chocolate, you know, your girl loves her chocolate. And it was nice to get to know people. So yeah, that was our welcome dinner, and that was the end of day 1. So for day 3, this is your Golden Circle adventure day. We started this day by meeting in the lobby at about 8:35 for our bus to pick up. It was super nice that the bus literally could pull up right outside of the hotel, so we could just load up there and get started on the day. We had about an hour and 45-minute drive to the first bathroom break and coffee stop. And one thing I will say is they do provide adequate bathroom breaks throughout these day trips in Iceland, which is really nice. So the first place that we headed to was the Gullfoss waterfall, and this place was interesting. It was really cold and it was raining. It was a little slick in places, but this is a massive waterfall. Like, it was such a cool experience. This was one of the few places that I hadn't already been with my previous 3 days in Iceland. So I was excited to see a new place. We were able to walk around to different viewpoints of the waterfall. So we were able to go downstairs, or down some stairs, to get a lower viewpoint, which I'll insert some pictures and videos here. And then we were also able to go back up the stairs and kind of walk alongside the left side of the waterfall to be able to see a different view of it and kind of go behind it a bit. It was a really cool experience, and I enjoyed getting to hear the history of it. After the Gullfoss waterfall, we headed back on our bus, and we did a short little drive to our next stop, which was not on the itinerary, and it was a surprise. We got to stop and see Icelandic horses, and oh my god, it was so much fun. They were so cute. Fun fact, they look like ponies, but you don't call them ponies unless you really want to insult the Icelandic people. But we were able to feed the horses, and we were able to see them and take pictures with them. They were so precious. Oh my gosh, this was definitely a highlight of the trip, and I absolutely loved it. So after meeting the Icelandic horses, we got back on the bus for about 15 minutes, and we headed to an included lunch at the hot springs. This was a really nice lunch. They called it a vegetable soup, but to me it's tomato soup, and it is hands down the best tomato soup I've ever eaten in my life. I still think about this tomato soup to this day. So good. And we had a buffet. We got to choose between lamb and a chicken and all sorts of stuff. I'll insert some pictures of the food. It was so good. I absolutely loved it. So after we finished up our included lunch, the lunch place that we were eating at, we actually could walk outside the building and cross the road to one of the hot springs. I will include the name because I, again, don't know how to say it. This hot spring does erupt about every 7 minutes. I try as I may, I only got like the last half of one of the big like eruptions before we had to leave, but it was really cool to see. Depending on where you stand, you might get wet. We luckily were not in that space, but it was really cool. I will say that it smells like sulfur there, so if you do not like the smell of that, keep that in mind. So we could spend a little bit of time over there. Our lunch went a little bit longer, so we didn't get to spend as much time at the geysers before we had to head back to the bus for our next stop. So then we headed back on the bus and we were headed to the Itinerary National Park. Anyways, put the name here. Anyways, so we ended up stopping at a cool little photo stop, and I'll insert some pictures. It was so pretty. We only stopped for about 10 or 15 minutes, but it was beautiful. Just to see the different landscapes of Iceland was amazing. I've never seen something like this before, and the mountains and the water, oh my god, it was stunning. And this is one of the things that I absolutely love about traveling with EF is the fact that like I would have never like thought to stop at this place, and I would have never known to stop at this place. So it's really nice traveling with a company that's done these trips hundreds of times, and they know the good places to stop, because sometimes you miss these hidden gems when you're traveling on your own. After that little photo stop, we hopped back on the bus and we drove for about another 45 minutes. And that's one thing I want to enlighten you about Iceland is this is going to be a trip that you spend a lot of time on the bus. Just keep that in mind when you're booking this trip. For me, I don't mind that. I love getting to see the different landscapes because the landscapes will drastically change with Iceland. You may be driving by lava fields, or you may be driving by the ocean. I mean, the different views that you can see, like I'll try to insert some pictures to prove what I'm saying of views out the bus window. It's insane. So just keep that in mind. If you're not a fan of being on the bus a lot, then this might not be the trip for you. If you don't really mind, it's not that big of a deal because we do a lot of stops and there's a lot of cool stuff to see and do in between. So we got to the Itinerary National Park and we got dropped off by our bus, and it was really cool because we got to stop and we got to explore the national park a little bit. This place is really neat because you get to actually walk in between two tectonic plates, which is between Europe and North America, which is really neat. I've never been in a place like this before, and it was just a really neat to explore. There was this beautiful little river that we crossed over with the ice around the river, and it was just absolutely stunning. I mean, everywhere you look when you're in Iceland is just picturesque, and it was such a fun little place to explore. We probably spent maybe an hour or so there. We were dropped off at point A in the park, and then we walked down through the national park through the tectonic plates, and we were picked up at a different part of the park. So after that, we were back on the bus headed back to the hotel. I want to preface this by saying, because I went to Iceland in winter, we are far enough north on the globe that the days are very short there. The sun did not technically rise until 10 a.m. The sun came up at 10 and the sun began to set at 4. So where I live in the south, that's kind of wild. The earliest that we see the sun setting is 5 o'clock, but the sun is also up by 7 or 8 o'clock. So to me, it was very interesting. So just keep in mind that we didn't get to do as much just because we quite literally did not have the daylight to be able to do and see these things. So if you want to see and do more in Iceland, you might want to consider going in the summer, where you're going to have so much more sun. In fact, you may, depending on what part of Iceland you're in, you may get 24 hours of sun. So just keep that in mind with a trip to Iceland in the winter. On day 3, we were headed back to Reykjavik to our hotel, and we were supposed to get there at about 4:15, I believe. So with this trip, because it is the winter escape and you're in Iceland, you can see the northern lights, which is pretty cool. So EF does include this in their itinerary. But the way this works, to keep in mind, is there is a northern lights chase. They typically schedule it for this day, and the reason they do this is because it's the first full day in Iceland. Just for you to know, just because it's scheduled on day 3 of the trip does not mean that you're going to do it. There's so many factors that goes into the northern lights, and there's a lot of really intelligent people out there that know how to track these things, and they can kind of determine if the lights are going to be strong or if they're going to make an appearance. If it's too cloudy or if it's raining, then you're definitely not going to see them. So if that's the case, then they will push the northern lights chase to the next day to wait for more favorable conditions to see the northern lights. But we lucked out and the lights were favorable to be seen. Even though on this scale, I'll have to look up the name of what it's called, was only rating it as a 1, we still got a pretty good show. So that was pretty cool, and I enjoyed seeing the northern lights. This was the 3rd time that I was seeing the northern lights in Iceland, and also seeing the northern lights was actually one of the biggest reasons that I booked this trip. So as far as northern lights, just a couple things for you to know. I had a different guide before my EFUltimateBreak trip started that told us that if you can see the stars, you can see the northern lights. So keep that in mind, and you want to be away from a lot of light pollution. You do not want a lot of like street lights and things of that nature. That makes it harder to see them. But the good thing is once you're outside of the city, there's a pretty good chance that you'll see the northern lights, at least when I went anyways. So we were out, we left the hotel I think at about 8 o'clock for our northern lights tour, and I think we were back by about midnight or so. We were able to see them for a while, and then we went back, and that was the end of day 3. Now we're on to day 4, which is our day trip to the south coast, which I already knew I was going to love because I love the south coast of Iceland. Started this day at 8:10 in the morning. We met in the lobby, got on the bus. We drove for about 2 hours and 15 minutes before we did our first bathroom and coffee stop. The first place that we stopped outside of our bathroom break was we got to do a little photo stop for about 10 or 15 minutes to see the volcano that erupted back in like 2010, I believe. I believe they refer to it as the E15 because the volcano's name starts with an E and it has 15 letters in it, and the newscasters and all the reporters could not say the actual name because it is an Icelandic name, and I'm not the only one who can't pronounce these words. This volcanic eruption actually impacted like a lot of Europe. We got to kind of walk around, and they do have some information about the volcano, and we took some selfies with it, and we just kind of got to see it, so it was pretty neat to see that. Oh, and something else really interesting about this trip, when we went, there was a volcano erupting, and it had started about 2 days before I flew in, the Friday before, and we could literally see the eruption from the plane when it was landing. So after visiting the E15 volcano, we headed to see the Skogafoss waterfall, and this was the second time for me seeing this waterfall, which was actually kind of cool because it was a little bit more melted. The first time I saw it, it was very frozen, and so we were able to get closer and get some great pictures and just explore. It was still too frozen to be able to go up the stairway around it to where you can look down on the waterfall. So after visiting the Skogafoss waterfall, we were back on the bus and headed to the famous black sand beach that has the infamous sneaker waves. This was really cool to be able to spend some time there. We also got to see the iconic rock formations, the church up close, and also get that iconic view of the village of Vik, which was really amazing. Then we were on to our next stop, which was a glacier. I will insert the name of said glacier. They had a really cool lookout spot where you could kind of look down over the glacier, and you could also choose to hike down. So then we headed to another waterfall, which I'm going to insert the name because I don't know how to say it in the slightest. And this was really cool to see this waterfall. This again was the second time I've seen this waterfall, but the first time it was after dark. It was a nice little stop that I enjoyed getting to actually see the waterfall. So after that, we were on the bus headed back to Reykjavik, and we were going to get there at about 6:15. And by the way, this was Thanksgiving. So like I mentioned before, I did do this trip over Thanksgiving. Me and some of my new friends, we opted to go to the food hall. This food hall was really neat. It was kind of like a food court, I guess would be what we would kind of describe it as here, minus the mall. So we had our little Thanksgiving spread, and it was a really fun day. Like I didn't feel like I missed Thanksgiving that way. So after we got dinner, we decided to walk out to the harbor because the scale that they used to determine the northern lights indicated that there might be some activity. So we walked out to the harbor and we just kind of hung out by the rocks, by the water, and we were able to see the northern lights again. This was the 4th time getting to see the northern lights. It never gets old. So that is it for day 4 of this trip. For day 5, we had our Sky Lagoon and our farewell dinner. So we did not actually meet up for the Sky Lagoon until 12:30, so we had a free morning. So we had the free morning, which was really nice because we'd had some earlier mornings every day of the trip thus far. We used this morning to just kind of get up. We went to Bread and Company and we got some lovely pastries. We hung out, just kind of chilled, and then we walked and we did some shopping and picked up some souvenirs, made sure we had everything we wanted because it was the last day. Then we made our way to the famous hot dog stand, and we got one of the famous hot dogs. If you go to Iceland, you must try their hot dog all the way. So I enjoyed it. It was really good. I'm not a fan of raw onions, but I still really enjoyed it. So it was really nice to get to try that finally on the last day of the trip. I finally got the most iconic hot dog that apparently Bill Clinton made famous. At least that's what we were told. So it was really good. So we had that for lunch before we headed back to the hotel to get ready to leave for the Sky Lagoon. Like I mentioned earlier, there was a volcano erupting. It did start to erupt near the Blue Lagoon, which is typically where EFUltimateBreak does take most of their people on their trips, is typically the Blue Lagoon. But because lava was covering the parking lot, they had it closed. So we ended up going to the Sky Lagoon instead. I'm gonna be honest, I was really excited that we got to go to the Sky Lagoon. One, I understand it's a little bit closer, but the Sky Lagoon is known for their iconic 7-step ritual, which I will insert the name of it, the Icelandic name. It's called the Salmon Pass. The Salmon Pass. The Salmon Signature Pass. And it includes a drink. One thing I do want to let you know, when you go to the Sky Lagoon, you're given a wristband, and this wristband is going to unlock your locker where you can keep your clothes and your things that you change into and anything in there, and it's going to give you access to the 7-step ritual and also let you purchase a drink when you're on the lagoon as well. I do want to let you know that when you go to get a drink from the bar, make sure you question them as to what is included with your wristband. I did not do this, and I got like a passion fruit martini, I believe. I don't remember. Whatever kind of drink I got, it wasn't included. So when we were checking out of the Sky Lagoon, we got a nice little surprise that I had to pay for an $18 drink, which not that big of a deal for me, but for some people, if you're on an extreme budget, then yeah, that's pretty detrimental. So I did want to preface that I'm pretty sure mostly the drink that's included is like beer and wine, but just check with the bartenders because they didn't tell us this. So be proactive and ask if that's important to you. But anyways, so we started off in the lagoon, which is beautiful. The lagoon goes up to the edge where you can actually look out over the harbor into the ocean, which was so amazing. And it was so relaxing. At first, we kind of just got our drinks and we kind of just hung out in lagoon and just enjoyed it and soaked it all up. It was absolutely amazing and so relaxing. I was not cold. I was really interested on how it was going to be being in a bathing suit and being in the water, and it's Iceland in winter and it's cold, but I was never once cold. The Sky Lagoon is a little different. You can get your hair wet. It's not a big deal. I think it's the Blue Lagoon that like you have to put stuff in your hair to protect it, and then you have to like wash it and then put something else in it to help keep like from damaging your hair or something like that. I don't know all the specifics because we obviously didn't go there, so I don't know. So yeah, that was the first part. So if you do the 7-step ritual at the Sky Lagoon, I highly recommend allowing at least 30 minutes. I think we had about 3 hours altogether at the Sky Lagoon before we had to be back on the bus to head back to the hotel. So make sure you allow at least 30 to 40 minutes in order to do the entire 7-step ritual. You're probably wondering like, so what is this 7-step ritual, Chelsea? Glad you asked. So the first part is obviously it's the lagoon, and I'm going to insert all of the names. First step is the lagoon, like I just talked about. Second step is the cold plunge. And full disclosure, I almost did not do this, but this British guy pressured me and one of my friends into doing it. So we did it, and I can't find the video where I did it, but what I can tell you is I cursed the entire time. I did like nothing but explicitives came out of my mouth. Like, not my friend. No desire to ever do that again. Not at all. Did not like it. 0 of 10, do not recommend. But I'm glad I did it for the sake of the ritual. But it was not my vibe at all. Now, luckily, step 3 is the sauna. So you go into a dry heat sauna and warm up, which thank God, because you're freezing, you're chilled to your bones. So I was so glad to sit in the sauna. It is beautiful. You have the hot stones sitting in the middle-ish front of the room, and you are getting to look out over the ocean. It was absolutely stunning. We sat in there for a while. I enjoyed it. After the dry heat sauna, you move on to the cold mist. So once again, you go back to getting cold. So we walk through this space where basically it's just ice cold mist hitting you. And again, we did this part very quickly because again, I do not like the cold. Did not really care for this, but again, we're here for the experience. Next, you come into a room where they are going to give you a scrub that you mix with some water, and then you go and you just scrub your entire body. You're going to exfoliate, get all that dead skin off, but you're going to actually leave the scrub on. Then you head to the Gulfa, to the steam room, and then with the exfoliation scrub on, you just hang out in the steam room for however long you're able to. So we hung out there. At this point, that is when I was sweating like none other. I don't know if it was the scrub or the fact that my body went from hot to cold that many times. So we didn't last in the sauna as long. After that, they do have communal showers where you can rinse off the body scrub that you still have on your body while you're in your bathing suit, so you can get all that off. And then you have the option to head back to the lagoon, which is what we did. We just kind of hung out at the lagoon. We explored a little bit more. They actually have a beautiful waterfall that we found, so we enjoyed spending time there and just relaxing. You could easily spend a day at this lagoon. It was so nice. I absolutely loved this. So we headed back to the hotel and we arrived by about 4:30. We had time to like shower, freshen up, and it was time to get ready for the farewell dinner, which was so sad. So we had our farewell dinner here. It was a buffet style of typical Icelandic dishes, and the food itself was good, but I have some thoughts on this farewell dinner. So let's get into it. First off, we got to our reservation early, so we had to wait. No big deal, you know. Well, they were late seating us. Okay, again, no big deal. Life happens. We roll with it. So we get our food. We're rushed to get our food to go through this buffet line, and we're eating our food. There's 3 different courses that we did, I believe. I will try to insert some pictures. The food was pretty good, and it was all going well until all of a sudden we were told it was time to go, which was really weird because typically farewell dinners, like you hang out, you linger, like you reminisce with the new friends that you've made, you talk about your highlights of the trip. Like it's just a really good experience, right? Not for this one. And I do want to preface by saying that our tour director was arguing with the manager of saying like, hey, you seated us late, then you rushed us through dinner, and now you're telling us that we got to go because you have another party coming in and you need the seats. No, like he literally went to bat for us, and I appreciate that. Unfortunately, he didn't win out, unfortunately, so we did have to get back on the bus. So it was super rushed. Like by the time we even got to the dessert thing, like we were basically grabbing desserts as we were walking out the door. So do not recommend this restaurant. I might have enjoyed the food, but the experience was just terrible. Nothing on EF, nothing on our tour director. It was not a fun experience. I did not appreciate this, and I made sure I detailed that in the review I left on the trip with EF, and I'm sure our tour director also let them know. So I'm hoping that they will not use this place again, because I know it's Europe and I know that their customer service is different than ours, but I've done 4 trips with EF and I've never had a hotel or a restaurant ever do us like that. So was not a fan of that. After that, we went back to the hotel to start packing up to get ready. A lot of people had extremely early departure times to get to the airport, but a lot of people did go down to the bar that is at the hotel and hang out, and this is really good that there was time to hang out with the group and get to see and just talk with everyone, since we got so rudely kicked out of our farewell dinner really quickly. So it was nice to have that time as well included. So that is it for day 5. So day 6, this is your departure day, depending on when your flight is, depends on when you're going to leave. There were some people I think that had to leave the hotel at like 3 and 4 a.m. to be able to make like a 6 a.m. flight. It's about a 45-minute drive from the city center of Reykjavik to the airport. I was not flying out until 4:45 p.m. so I got a half day in Iceland because our transport was at 1 o'clock. It was really nice because I did fly in early and I booked my own flights for this trip. My tour director so kindly allowed me to tag along with the group back to the airport. So I ended up being able to cancel my previously booked transportation to the airport and save a little bit of money, and also just take away a lot of the stress of like figuring out where I needed to be, where I needed to go. I appreciated that. So shout out to Sandra. Thank you for making this trip so much easier, because that part was stressful and you made it a lot easier. So love that. That day we just kind of we walked around, did some more shopping, souvenirs, had another hot dog. So that is the day-by-day itinerary. So now I'm going to give you my thoughts on the trip overall. The first and most important thing that I feel that needs to be shared about this trip is I highly recommend flying in early or extending and staying late. This is only a 6-day trip, and Iceland is beautiful. It is the most beautiful and amazing country I've ever been to. It is now my favorite country visited. Out of all 15 countries, it's my favorite. I am going to do a separate video on my time before I went to Iceland with some recommendations and kind of go step by step by what I chose to do and what I recommend to do if you choose to extend or come early. So I will have a video coming soon about that. As far as the trip being 6 days, for me personally, I'm not a fan of 6-day trips. Before this trip, my shortest trip was 8 days, which again, that becomes more like 6 days because you have 2 days that are basically flying and just travel days. I did not care as much for the 6-day trip for a couple reasons. One, it's not a lot of time to get to know people. I met people on my trip at the farewell dinner that I had never seen before. That is wild to me. Every single trip I've done so far, like I may not have gotten to know everyone, but at least like I could pick my tour mates out of a crowd. But it was wild to be sat at a table and be like, hi, I'm Chelsea, what's your name? Like, I had no idea you were on my trip. I had no idea you existed. So I did not like that, just because 4 days is not a lot of time to be able to get to know people. I mean, the people I did get to know, I made some amazing friends that I still keep up with, and were amazing ladies that I am so excited I got to meet. So I'm not saying that you won't meet anybody. It's just, I only probably got to know 4 people, maybe 5 if you include my room. Yeah, 5 people altogether. Whereas on most of my other trips, like, I normally get to know 10 to 15 new people. Also, another thing that I was not a fan of was this was the biggest trip I'd ever been on in terms of group size. There was 40 some people on this trip, which that also played a fact into not getting to know everyone. Like, you can't get to know 40 plus people in 4 days. You just can't do it. So I wasn't a fan of the fact that it was a large group, but I have to keep in mind that this trip was over Thanksgiving. So it really pulled in a lot of teachers, and it was very PTO friendly because it was over Thanksgiving. So of course, a lot of people are going to take advantage of it. So again, you probably won't have, or I won't say that you won't, but it's less likely that you'll be on as big of a trip. You'll have a smaller group if you don't go over Thanksgiving. So just keep that in mind when you're booking this trip. If it's a PTO friendly time, you may have a larger group. But that's why I really, really recommend extending in early. I will say that even with me coming in 3 days early and being there for 8 days total, I was pleased. I will say if I hadn't come in early, I would have been very disappointed in this trip personally. Knowing what I know after getting to visit the different places that I visited before the EF trip started, I would have been extremely disappointed if I had missed out on that, knowing what I know now. So keep that in mind. Again, extend or come early if you can. If you can swing it, do it. It's so worth it. You will not regret it. So another thing that was kind of sad about this trip, again, going back to the group size, was we didn't get to know our tour director. Every other trip I've been on, I've gotten to know my tour directors really well. And I realized a lot of that had to do with bus time, because when you don't have a full trip that takes up all 40 seats on a bus, the tour directors will bounce around. They will make it a point to get to know everyone, just get to know people. And when you have a full bus, a tour director really can't do that. And also, if you're in Iceland, they are big on seatbelts. Like, everyone in Iceland is the seatbelt police. The seatbelt police, let me just tell you. It is wild. They will bark at you if you don't have your seatbelt on and you're not sitting when they're driving. They are such sticklers on that. So, and again, we only had 4 days, so there's 40 people. So how can one person get to know everyone? So that was a little disappointing. I'm done being negative Nelly. Those were the things that I was not a huge fan of with the trip. Now, would I recommend this trip? Absolutely. I still got to see a lot of great things. I hadn't got to do the Golden Circle. I got to see waterfalls that I hadn't seen. I got to try new restaurants. I got to have a tour director giving us ideas and options and recommendations on bars and nightlife and just museums and everything. Like, now, all that to say, I definitely still recommend this trip. This is a great trip, and you still get to see a lot and get to do a lot. Iceland just has a lot to do, and there's something else to consider. Iceland is a very expensive country, so if I had done like a 10-day trip in Iceland, I'd probably be really broke right now. I don't know that I could have done that trip. So that's something to keep in mind, that it is expensive, and this trip does make it more affordable to be able to get a taste of Iceland. So it's really good. I like this trip, and what I can definitely see as being a pro of this trip is it gives you a good taste of different parts of Iceland. The Golden Circle, the South Coast, the lagoons, the hot springs, the geysers, all these things, to where if you want to go back to Iceland somewhere down the road, you'll know what you want to spend more time on. So it's a really good, like, a sample platter of Iceland, and I really liked that. And again, the other positives are we had a lot of cool photo stops that I would have never known, like hidden gems that I would have never been able to do, like getting to see the Icelandic ponies and getting to pet them and feed them. I would have never been able to pull that off on my own. So there was so many great things that I enjoyed about the trip with EF. These are just things that I just want to be open and honest about, things that didn't quite go according to plan, but there were still positives and pros to taking a trip with EF. So I still recommend this trip. I'm still super glad that I did this trip. I would be so sad if I missed out. It was so funny because it, like I said, this wasn't like high on my bucket list of priorities, but it got prioritized because of the Northern Lights, and it was one of the most amazing trips I've ever been on. So this has been my review, honest review of the Iceland Winter Escape, and breaking down the itinerary day by day of all the things that we did. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them down below. I would love to answer any questions you might have. And just as a last reminder, if you want to book this trip or any of the other amazing trips that EF Ultimate Break offers, please feel free to book with the link in the description box and use this code, as that's going to give you $100 off of your first trip with EF, as well as any sale prices that are going on, so you can save more money and put it towards another trip. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Bye.